Hi everyone, I'm super happy to be here. Like Jürgen said, I am Arizmendi. I'm a user experience at AKQA. I'm originally from Mexico, but I've been here for about 2 years, or a little bit less than that. And I still don't speak any German, so I'm sorry for that. So today I wanted to talk about user testing, first of all, because it's one of my passions. I really believe in this, and I think that we should do it more often. And I think it relates really well to the theme of this month, which is invest, because it is an investment in time and money. So I wanted to see the easy side of it and how can we do it more often. So user testing is a very popular word. We've heard about it a lot of times. There are a lot of articles. Google is always talking about A/B testing and why you should do it. But I think that it sounds very big and very expensive and complicated. So I wanted to simplify it a little bit with this next experiment. So I've done this a million times, and I wanted to invite you to do it too. So the next time that you're in a bar, you can go to the bartender and ask him to prepare you anything. And he's probably going to ask you a few questions like, do you like your drink sweet? Do you like tequila? Do you like whiskey? And that is going to happen almost every time. But if it doesn't happen and you like the drink, I think the bartender, first of all, it's amazing, but also the probabilities of you liking that drink are very low. And I think that user testing is kind of the same. So we ask a few questions, or a lot, before designing something to prepare the right cocktail for someone, right? So why is it important? Imagine that you're making a project, right? So you're at the start of it, and you get some brief, you get some documents, you have some idea, you do some desk research, and then you design, and then you build, and then you test it at the end. So that's going to set you back, because obviously you're going to have to change some things. And what I want to say with that is that you're going to be wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. I think we need to learn how to be comfortable with that, because the faster you get to know what your mistakes were, the easier you're going to have the time to fix them, and it's going to be less work in the end. Another reason why I think it's important is because user expectations are just increasing by the minute. If you have a really good experience booking a flight, you're going to expect the same in the next experience that you have. So us as designers have to respond to those expectations and make it even better. Working with big clients, small clients, freelancing, I think that the two main challenges that I found are that it's always time and money, the main restrictions. And I think that happens because they don't really see value. Some people don't understand it, or some people say we don't have enough time for to do that, or we need to launch something fast. So our challenge is really, how can we transform that perspective into thinking, how can we spend less time, less money, and how can we show the real value of user testing? So I have two principles. One of them is test small, and the other one is test often. This is not something that I invented, but something that I try to keep in mind every time that I'm in a project. I found this quote, and there are many online, really, but I really like it. It's by Nielsen. So usability tests that are super complex are really just a waste of resources and time, because you're going to get the best results out of just using 5 users and running as many tests as you can and as often as you can. To illustrate these two principles, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite projects that I've been a part of. Working at AKQA, we had one client that gave us a very blue sky brief. They wanted to find business opportunities in the industry of DIY. So to start with, DIY can be many, many things. So that already tells you, like, okay, great, it's a great brief, but also how do we narrow it down? So the exciting thing about that was that the client didn't come up with a solution right away. They really gave us the freedom to go out there and talk to people and find out the real problems of people and how can we find an exciting solution for that. So the team was just made of 2 people. Obviously there were people coming in and out. It was a very short project, it was just 6 weeks. And it was amazing the amount of things that we could do in that short amount of time. And then we got to do 3 big surveys, and we had in total, I think, around 25 people. It could either be people that come into the office and made a user test, or also we go out there and we just go to stores and ask people around that. So we use the design sprint methodology. I think it's really great. I think it's something that we all know too, and it works really great. It's very fast and you have to iterate, but my favorite part was testing, because it happened every Friday, every single Friday. So it didn't matter if we had time to prepare like a really beautiful prototype. We had people already scheduled and we had to test it no matter what. So the process that worked really well was basically these 4 steps that I try to do every time that I'm in a project. And it's very, very simple. So you plan, you collect, you analyze, and then you report. It sounds complicated, but it's not. So first you have to plan like what objectives do you have, why do you want to test, how you're going to test it, and who you're going to talk to. Then you have to collect the materials, and materials can be anything. It can be a prototype, it can be just a piece of paper if you want. You have to collect the participants, obviously, and then the answers right after the testing. And then after that, by analyzing, you just have to compile, cluster, and compare to see if you find any patterns in your testings. And then the report part, I think it's very important, because you have to document all of your findings in a very compelling way. I really don't believe in having like this big books of like, we made a test and this is everything you need to know. No one's going to read that, so it has to be really simple and easy to understand for everyone. And especially that's going to help you iterate for the next step in your project. This can take you up to just 3 days, no more than that. So these are just some guidelines that have helped me, and of course there are many, many other things that you could do, but I think that if we want to start small, this can help you really well. So the first thing is starting the conversation early. I think that many times we get into a project and user testing is like an afterthought. It's not really planned out from the beginning. So if you are part of the planning team, or if you have a say in a project, which I think everyone does, you should just ask, the question, is there a budget for user testing? Do we have time to do that? And if it's not there, then try to push for it. Because sometimes it's just as easy as, let's do it, and someone might say, okay, let's go for it. The second thing is to know your users. One thing that can help you a lot is to define, even if it's very general, your target, because if you don't have this well defined, the findings that you have are not going to be relevant to your product, so it's not going to really solve anything. And the next thing is to follow them. So if you already know your audience, you probably know where they go on a Saturday morning, where they like to buy things, and just chase them. You can go to a cafe, ask them for a coffee, maybe a few minutes of their time, and you're going to be surprised at how easy that is. Another thing is to use your network. Of course, we're talking about how can we do this with less time and money. So the first thing is make use of your network. So even if you don't have someone in your direct circle, somebody in your circle is going to know someone that fits into the criteria that you're looking for. The second thing is guerrilla testing. So like I said, you can go to a cafe and you can just ask them for a coffee. I can really recommend IKEA. I've tried that a lot, and they have like an area where there's like a lounge, and it's really great. And the cool thing about guerrilla testing is that you can ask them for 10 minutes, they're gonna give you 20, because it's fun for them. And actually, one time when we were in IKEA, I was talking to my colleague in Spanish, and then someone overheard us, and he was curious, like, what are you doing? Can I help you? So it's just really that easy. And I'm surprised, actually, about the amount of people that speak Spanish in here. The nice thing is to involve other people. So I found that the perfect number of people to do a user test is always 2 people. Because if you try to do it alone, it's just too much. You cannot guide the interview, write down the findings, record, because if you record it, then you're gonna have to go back and re-listen to everything, so that's gonna take more time. And one thing that I like to do is, if I'm going out and doing guerrilla testing, I'm not really a social person, and I actually don't like to talk to strangers, like, hey, can I talk to you, come here. So what I like to do is just to bring someone that is really good at that, so I can just focus on doing the test. And then another cool thing that you can do is invite the client to look at the test live. One second. So there's a technique that we used that was, we were in a room in the office, and we were doing an interview to the person, and we had the laptop. So we called a colleague who was in another room, and we actually Skyped this colleague. So he could see the screen, he could hear everything, he could see the person's reaction. And so you don't really need like a lab test to do this type of things. And you can invite the client to see the live reactions. Another thing is to choose the right prototype. And it always depends on the goals and the objectives that you have. So for this example, we were trying to find the journey of the DIYers, actually. And we wanted to find the pain points. So in that picture, this is like our assumption and what we thought the process was. And this was our prototype. It's just the steps of the journey in cards. This cost, what, €5? And they had to arrange them in the order that they did it. And they didn't have to use all the steps. And as they were doing that, we were asking them questions like, what was the most difficult part of this? And this ended in a customer journey with all the information that we needed. Another thing that you may have is to test new concepts or new ideas. I actually came up with this prototype. I think I'm going to patent it because I think it's really great and very simple. I call it the App Store prototype. So what it is essentially you have like the title of your service, your app, or whatever it is, and you have like the key features of your service. So just like in the App Store, you can see an app and then you can decide if you want to buy it or not. And it was really, really useful. We ended up using it in a survey, but we also did it in person. So we got the quant and we got the qualitative. Another thing is you may need to do more elaborate tests, like task completion. And so for that, you can use interactive prototypes. Of course, this takes a little bit more time, but I think it's important to make it feel as real as possible. So this one, we made it in Principle, and it was great. We got to test it out before we developed it. The last thing is to distribute your budget. So if you are one of the lucky ones that have budget to test, instead of doing one test and spending everything at the beginning or at the end or whenever you want, try to divide it. Again, test small and test often. Because that way you're going to have time to iterate and have different learnings, and in the end you're going to have a much richer experience. So to summarize, I think that you should invest in doing a user test, because in the end it's just more rewarding. It's really, really nice to hear when you're testing with someone, the hypothesis that you had to be right. We had one experience where after like the 4th iteration, this tester told us, oh my God, how did you know like I needed that? Like this is perfect. It looks like someone really thought this out. And I don't think someone would say that if we hadn't had the time to test and to iterate. The second thing is you're gonna have happier clients, or if you're the client, you're gonna be happier because you're gonna have like data to reassure you that your product or your service or whatever it is, it's great. And overall, we're designers, right? So we want to create better experiences. And the last thing that I want to leave you with is a personal story. This is a drawing that I did when I was 10. I really liked to draw when I was a kid, but I used to get really, really upset when someone told me, show me, before I was done. And I would always say, it's not ready, like, let me just work a bit on it. And then I studied design, and of course, you have to show your work to teachers, to colleagues, or whatever. And I kept saying the same. Let me just tweak it a little bit, try to refine it, because I think that we all have that, right? Like, we want to be perfectionists. But I kept hearing that nowadays, like when I work with clients, with project managers, or whatever it is, when it comes to user testing, it's like, just wait a little bit. It's not ready yet. So let's just add this tiny little thing, and then we'll do it. So I just want to say, don't be like 10-year-old Diana, and just go out there and show your work. Thank you.